In this high school football regular season, for the final time, the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show is underway. Jesse Nelson with you in the Everlight Solar Studio at ESPN Madison. We welcome you in on the ESPN Madison, ESPN Milwaukee, and Daily Dodge, ESPN Beaver Dam YouTube channels. This is the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show. The regular season in the books, conference champions crowned, and the playoffs and their respective seedings are all set to go. 7 divisions. Everybody now has their paths lined up for a chance to get to Camp Randall Stadium and win a gold ball in 2024. The Dean Dennis Semrau of Madison Area High School Sports, a little bit under the weather this week. He'll be joining us on the phone in just a few minutes to review some of the rankings this week. Again, small school, large school, 2 divisions, how we rank them here every week on the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show. The small schools, teams competing in Divisions 4 through 7 at Camp Randall Stadium for championships next month. The large schools, teams competing in Divisions 3 through 1. We start, as we do every week, with the small school rankings, the final rankings for the 2024 high school football regular season. Once again, we will have more rankings at the end of the playoffs when all the state champions have been crowned. We will have our final poll, but this is the final regular season poll of 2024. What a long journey it's been for all of these teams and for everyone around high school football spanning the state. Checking in at number 10, it's never too late to make your debut in the rankings. And in at number 10, the Cambridge Blue Jays, winners 48-6 at home against Marcus Ann in the final week of the regular season. Cambridge, undefeated champions of the Eastern Suburban Conference. Cambridge and Belleville will meet in a 1-8 matchup in the Division 6 postseason. Cambridge, welcome to the rankings. Better late than never. The Blue Jays in at number 10. Checking in at number 9 in the small school rankings for the final edition of this season, the Prairie du Chien Blackhawks, 8-1 on the season. They win their final contest 42-7 on the road against Lancaster, champions of the Southern Wisconsin Conference. The Prairie du Chien Blackhawks, they are a number 1 seed in the Division 5 playoffs. They will take on 8 seed Southwestern, potential matchup looming if it plays out as chalk with Darlington in level 3, and a potential showdown with Stratford in level 4. More on the Tigers coming up here in just a few moments. Number 8 this week, the Wrightstown Tigers, winners 35-0 in their final game of the season at New London. They finish in second place in the Northeastern Conference. You'll hear about the team that finished in first place in that conference in just a few moments as well. Wrightstown is a number 1 seed in the Division 5 playoffs, just like Prairie du Chien at number 9. Wrightstown gets Sturgeon Bay in Division 5. Wrightstown Stratford State Championship potentially in play in Division 5. Let's see what we get there. And meanwhile, number 7 in this week's small school rankings, the Regis Ramblers, a perfect unbeaten season, 9-0 for Regis. But check out how it ended. They got a Osseo Fairchild did not field the team, so they got a forfeit win in the final week of the regular season. They scheduled the game with United Township, Illinois. Came down to the buzzer, 36-35. Regis battle-tested in their final game of the season. Regis finishes 9-0, champions of the Clover Belt Conference. They are a number 1 seed, getting 8 seed Fall Creek in the Division 6 playoff picture. Speaking of 6, in at number 6 in the final rankings of the regular season, also an undefeated team, the Kiel Raiders, 62-13 winners against the Kohler Co-op program in the final week of the regular season. Kiel, champions of the Eastern Wisconsin Conference. The boys basketball team was undefeated at the end of the regular season last year, made it all the way to the Kohl Center in the state title. Let's see if Kiel football can get it done. Despite being undefeated, despite being 6th ranked in the state, Kiel does draw a number 2 seed, according to the computers in the WIAA's system. Kiel gets 7 seed Peshtigo in the Division 5 playoffs, and it could be Kiel versus Wrightstown, the number 8 ranked team at the end of the season here, in level 3 of those Division 5 playoffs. Man, Division 5 could have some stacked matchups as this thing plays out. Check out the other side of the rankings now, your top 5 for the final time this year. In at number 5, Undefeated, 9-0, the Freedom Irish. They cap off an unbeaten season with a 34-21 win on the road against the reigning Division IV runners-up Luxembourg Casco. Freedom, the champions of the Northeastern Conference. Wrightstown finished second in that conference. Freedom qualifies as a Division IV school this year. Number 1 seed Freedom gets 8 seed St. Croix Central in the opening round of the Division IV bracket. And Freedom is on the opposite side of both Columbus and Aquinas in Division IV. We'll talk plenty about those potential state championship matchups in mere moments. The number 4 ranked team in the small school media poll is the Edgar Wildcats, 8-1 on the year, champions of the Merriwood CWC Conference. Their only loss this year, Edgar, came to Stratford. Edgar winners 42-21 on the road at Abbotsford to close out the season. Number 1 seed, the Edgar Wildcats, in the Division 7 bracket, the only Division 7 team ranked here at the end of the season. Edgar gets Pittsville in the opening round, potential to face 2 seed Iola Scandinavia in Level 3, which would be a very exciting Level 3 contest in Division 7. Again, you can check out the full brackets on the WIAA's official website, WIAAWI.org. How about the number 3 ranked team in the small school media poll? Final rankings of the season, Aquinas is number 3. They began the year as number 1, lost in week 2 to Columbus, did not lose another game. Winners 46-13 against Viroqua to close out the season. The champions of the Cooley Conference. And Aquinas does draw a number 1 seed. They get the number 8 seed, the Edgewood Crusaders, in the opening round of the Division 4 bracket. Potential to play 4 seed Lodi, who spent many weeks ranked throughout this season as well from the Capital Conference in Level 2. So Aquinas gets looped in with a bunch of the Capital Conference teams, including number 2, the Columbus Cardinals. Columbus caps off an undefeated season, 9-0, with a 49-14 win at Beloit Turner, in a year in which they replaced their former coach, in a year in which they replaced the all-time leading rusher in the state. Columbus says no problem, runs the gauntlet, champions of the very competitive Capital Conference in the greater Madison area, and number 2 seed Columbus. Yes, they draw a 2 seed, despite being the second-ranked team in the state, according to our voters. 2 seed Columbus gets 7 seed Arcadia in the opening round of Division 4. Potential great matchups. I mean, this is a stretch for Columbus to go and run all the way to Camp Randall Stadium. They're going to have to beat some of the best. Arcadia in Level 1. 3 seed West Salem ends up in Division 4. And that could be the matchup for Columbus in Level 2. And number 1 seed Aquinas, who Columbus beat head-to-head in the regular season. Aquinas gets the number 1 seed despite Columbus being unbeaten. So Columbus would have to go at Aquinas for Level 3 if those two teams were to meet. Which means your number 1 team, as it has been almost all season long, congratulations to the Stratford Tigers, capping off an unbeaten season at 9-0 with a 43-8 convincing win on the road at Loyal Greenwood, the champions of the CWC Large Conference. Stratford, 1 seed. They get the 8 seed Horicon Hustisford in Division 5. And how about this potential matchup? A team that dropped out of the small school rankings this week could meet in Level 3. Number 1 seed Stratford, number 2 seed St. Mary Springs. If head coach Bob Hyland wants to go out on top in Division 5, he would have to take down a team that has spent the majority of weeks as the number 1 ranked team in the state in the small school division. Stratford and St. Mary Springs, a potential Level 3 matchup. Many thought that could be a state championship matchup just a couple of short weeks ago in Division 5. They have the potential to meet in Level 3. We'll get Dennis Semrau's thoughts in just a moment. First, I want to go to Hunter Vaughn, who accumulates the data from all of our voters from around the state. No computers involved in these rankings, Hunter Vaughn. These are straight from the humans, the voters, as it has been all season long from around the state in various areas. What stood out most to you in the final rankings of 2024?
Well, you mentioned St. Mary Springs. They missed out on being ranked in the final week by 1 vote. Cambridge edged them out with a 16 points to the 15 for St. Mary's Springs. They just barely missed out on getting all the way through. And then, speaking of 1 point, Stratford and Columbus. Columbus nearly overtook Stratford for that number 1 spot. 123 122.
Wow.
Stratford had 7 first-place votes to Columbus's 6. So the voters are very high on this Columbus squad. That's why a lot of people, as will be a theme in this conversation, going into the playoffs, a lot of people very confused by those computers and where it threw teams, and the decision-making that went behind some of the playoff spots. But this small school grouping, there's so many teams who I was like, oh yeah, we're going to see this matchup at state. Now we're going to be seeing them in level 3. We're going to be seeing them in level 4. A little disappointing there, just as a football fan, because you'd rather see some of these at Camp Randall. But this was one of the tighter weeks we've seen for the small school poll.
The small schools poll had been pretty consistent the last couple of weeks, so to see some at least close voting and a couple of change-ups here in the final week, definitely an interesting development as we close out the regular season. We now bring in the Dean of Area High School Sports. Again, a little under the weather this week, but we hope Dennis will be nice and well come postseason time here in just a couple of days. It's Dennis Semrau of ESPN Madison. Dennis, good afternoon. Welcome into the rankings poll. Your seat misses you here in the Everlight Solar Studio at ESPN Madison. As you review the small school rankings, as we just unveil them here for the final time in this regular season, what stands out most to you here at the end of the season?
Well, that Division 4 bracket is incredible. You've got Columbus and Aquinas on the same side, and Freedom Irish on the other side. And guess who? Winneconne, a team that's gotten votes all year long. They ended up 9-0, defeated Seymour for the Bay Conference title. They're in that lower left quadrant. So Freedom, Winneconne, Aquinas, and Columbus are the 4 teams that I picked right out of our poll. But why is Columbus a 2 seed and Aquinas a 1 seed in the same 8-team grouping, and Columbus beats Aquinas and blew through the Capital Conference? So, again, the computer rankings, they say, well, no, they're not transparent. So people are guessing, wondering what's going on. And then you've got a couple of teams in the large schools that didn't make it, but you're going, how are you applying your rules, your tiebreakers and whatever. So, but I think that Division 4 is going to be fun.
Division 4 will be fun. I think Division 5 is loaded, and we'll see how some of these matchups play out as we get to Camp Randall Stadium. Levels 4 and 5 going to be some tremendous potential matchups there if it plays out chalk. We'll talk about the computers at the conclusion of the show because I do want to address some of that as it pertains to these large schools as well. So we'll get to that conversation at the end here, Dennis. So you rest up. We got a couple of minutes to go, and then we'll bring you back in for the conversation with the large schools here in just a moment. The ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Poll Media Rankings Reveal Show, again, for the final time in 2024's regular season of the high school football campaign. Jesse Nelson with you in the Everlight Solar Studios at ESPN Madison for the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show. Small schools have been unveiled for the final time this regular season. Let's now move on to the large school top 10. For the final time, we take a look after conclusion of the regular season. 9 games in the books. In one team's case, 8 games in the books for all of these teams. Let's see how it shook out as we head into the postseason. And how about this for a shakeup? At number 10, it's a tie between 2 teams donning purple and white. The Waunakee Warriors and the Oconomowoc Raccoons. Now, this is fascinating because Waunakee, champions of the Badger Large Conference, lost early in the season to Madison Memorial, and we sat here and said, whoa, what an upset win. Is Waunakee, with a new head coach, Chris Graverson, taking over for the legend Pat Rice? Is this going to be a tough season for Waunakee? Well, what did they do? They ran the gauntlet in the Badger Large. They win the conference, had a couple of convincing victories down the stretch against Sun Prairie East and some other competitive teams. Waunakee is the champion of the Badger Large. Waunakee gets a number 1 seed in Division 1. So they're up to Division 1 this year because of how their performance factor played in after the last couple of years in Division 2. So Waunakee up to Division 1, and they draw a number 1 seed despite losing one game in the regular season, Waunakee gets 8 seed Wausau West in Division 1. Potential great Madison area matchup, 4 seed Middleton and 1 seed Waunakee in level 2, should things play out that way. By the way, Middleton and 5 seed Chippewa Falls are featured playoff game this week on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel. Meanwhile, the Oconomowoc Raccoons, the most talked about team in the state over the last couple of days. Oconomowoc won its final game of the regular season, 21-0, on the road against the Pewaukee Pirates. They are the champions of the Classic 8 Conference, the SEC of Wisconsin high school football. There is no better football conference in the state of Wisconsin than the Classic 8. Oconomowoc won the head-to-head tiebreaker by defeating the Arrowhead Warhawks in the middle part of the season. So Arrowhead and Oconomowoc both finished 6-1. Oconomowoc wins the conference, the best conference in the state, thanks to the head-to-head tiebreaker. No other team finished with just one loss in conference play. Oconomowoc 8-1 overall on the season. Riddle me this. Oconomowoc draws a 6 seed in Division 1. They are on the road in level 1 at 3 seed Racine Case, who did not win their conference. And if Oconomowoc wins that game, they have to go on the road at 2 seed Mugwanago in level 2, and potentially on the road at either number 1 seed Verona or number 4 seed Arrowhead, who is in the Classic 8, and they beat head-to-head to win the conference title if it should get to that point. I understand that we want to take the bias out of the rankings at the end of the season and that the computers can do a fair job of assessing certain quantities and qualities of these teams. If I'm the WIAA, I think there needs to be one more layer before these brackets go public of a common sense committee that simply takes a look and addresses some of the discrepancies that you can see in a bracket. Because a team like the Oconomowoc Raccoons finishing as the champions of the Classic 8 Conference do not deserve a 6 seed or to have to go on the road in every level of the postseason potentially as they try to make a run at a state title. A team that had such a quality run this year, having to do that is just a shame. So, Hunter Vaughn, what are your thoughts on Oconomowoc drawing a 6 seed? Because that is a brutal draw for Oconomowoc, the champions of the Classic 8.
The football fan in me is annoyed about it. I'm just going to try and play a little bit of devil's advocate and speak for the computer for a moment. And I'm wondering if it viewed the Classic 8 as not being as strong as the Conference Racine Case being in, because they came in second to undefeated Franklin, one of the best teams in the state. So it viewed that conference as being better, and then the computer that's why you see the 6 and the 3 seed. I still don't think it accounts for everything, but I'm thinking that's what the system viewed that as, and that's why, unfortunately, Oconomowoc got pushed down, because you had a conference champion that had losses on the season.
That's understandable, and again, the WIAA does not share what the criteria is for the rankings from the computers, and I'm okay with that. I understand you don't want to manipulate your seasons if you're some of the teams around the state. You want fair and competitive balance, and I understand that. But what I don't want is for the WIAA to be my grandpa when it comes to computers, where he says, the computer's doing something, I don't know what it's doing. But you just have to roll with it. Humans are in charge of the computers. And ultimately, if the WIAA and anyone overseeing football or anyone who just has a brain and can look at this and say, Oconomowoc doesn't deserve the seed that they had, we can change this for the sake of being fair and accurate with these rankings going into the postseason, these seedings going into the postseason, simply so that a team that deserves much better than it got in Oconomowoc doesn't have to face 3 potential road games and have its postseason run come up short after an absolutely fantastic year. It's a shame that that's the way that it played out, and it's a shame the WIA isn't doing anything to correct it, but nonetheless, we move forward. Oconomowoc tied for 10th in the rankings in the large schools division for the end of the regular season. All right, so that's our soliloquy on Oconomowoc and the seedings in the large schools. We'll get Dennis Semrau's thoughts in just a moment. In at number 9 this week in the large division, the Mugwanago Indians. Again, Classic 8. They finish in 3rd place in the conference, 7-2 on the season. They lost their final game of the year, which was a very tough non-conference game against Marquette, 42-35. McGuanago, a 2 seed. They draw 7 seed Janesville Craig in Division 1. And again, if Oconomowoc moves on over Racine Case, they could potentially go on the road to face number 2 seed McGuanago in Level 2. Absolutely stacked section of that bracket. Can't wait to see how it plays out. The number 8 ranked team in the large school poll for the final time of the regular season in 2024, the Mount Horeb-Barneveld Vikings, 9-0, champions of the Badger Small Conference. Mount Horeb-Barneveld draws a 2 seed. They get 7 seed Sauk Prairie in Division 3 after finishing with a 53-12 win over Portage. A tough draw for Mount Horeb-Barneveld, as well as a 2 seed in Level 3, potentially having to square up with number 1 seed Catholic Memorial. What a game that would be if it does come down to it. We were worried about whether Mount Horeb-Barneveld would face Notre Dame at Camp Randall Stadium or in Level 3 or Level 4 of the playoffs. Well, it's not Notre Dame they have to worry about. It's Catholic Memorial in Level 3. We may not get that Mount Horeb-Barneveld Notre Dame matchup that many of us were looking forward to potentially for a gold ball. The number 7 ranked team in the large school media poll for the final time in 2024 is the Arrowhead Warhawks, 7-2, winners 38-17 over Kettle Moraine to close out the season. Again, Arrowhead finishes in second in the Classic 8. Oconomowoc and Arrowhead both 6-1 in conference play, in the best conference in high school football in the state. Arrowhead lost the tiebreaker to Oconomowoc, so the Raccoons are the conference champs. Arrowhead comes in second. Arrowhead draws a 4 seed. They are at home against Sussex Hamilton in Division 1. Again, in that same section as McGuanago, Racine Case, Oconomowoc, all those teams that we've mentioned already. The number 6 ranked team in the large school media poll to close out the regular season, the Slinger Owls, undefeated on the season, champions of the North Shore Conference. They put their foot on the gas to close out the regular season, 45-7 on the road against the Cedarburg Bulldogs, a team that had been ranked for much of the season. So Slinger emerges as the best team of the North Shore. It was a 3-horse race there between Slinger, Cedarburg, and Homestead. Slinger ultimately prevails, and the Owls draw a number 1 seed in Division 2. They will match up with 8 seed Brookfield Central to open up the postseason. Large school media poll rankings reveal. Let's go to the top 5 at the end of the regular season. The number 5 ranked team, the Kimberly Papermakers, who did not play in week 1 of the season. They are 7-1 to close out the year. Kimberly wins, and how about this for a tight contest in the final game of the regular season? We knew it was backloaded for Kimberly. I don't know if anyone expected 10-9 as the final score, hosting Appleton North to close out the season. It ends up being a 3-way tie atop the Fox Valley Association, which if the Classic 8 is the SEC, then the Fox Valley is the Big Ten of high school football in the state of Wisconsin as far as conferences are concerned. Kimberly, Kaukauna, Neenah all finish with 1 loss, all to each other in a round robin in conference play in the Fox Valley Association. So Kimberly, Kaukauna, Neenah all split the conference title. Kimberly, the 5th ranked team in the state, they get a 2 seed in Division 1, and they host right away 7 seed Appleton North. So how about that? They play to a 1-point game in the final week of the regular season, and they got to go right back and do it again next week. One of the fun storylines to watch in Level 1 of the playoffs. Number 4 ranked team in the large school media poll, the Marquette Hilltoppers. They finish 8-1 on the year. Their only loss coming to the Arrowhead Warhawks back in week 1. 42-35. Marquette wins at McGuanago to close it out. Champions of the Greater Metro Conference. 1 seed Marquette trying to get back to Camp Randall Stadium as they did a year ago. They will open against the Milwaukee Marshall Co-op program in Division 1. Definitely a path for Marquette to try and make it to the state championship. The number 3 team in the large school media poll, the Notre Dame Tritons, again undefeated, 9-0. Notre Dame runs the gauntlet, 41-7. They beat Oshkosh North to cement the unbeaten regular season champions of the FRCC South. 2 seed Notre Dame. How'd they draw a 2 seed in Division 3? They get the 7, or I'm sorry, they're in Division 2. Maybe that's why. 2 seed Notre Dame and 7 seed Pewaukee meet in the opening round of the playoffs in Division 2. Your top 2 teams, number 2. These 2 teams were leapfrogging for a bit down the stretch. The Verona Wildcats, with their best ranking of the year in the Madison area, champions of the Big 8 Conference. Verona finishes 9-0 with a convincing 49-7 win against Janesville Craig. Verona and star Trey Poteet, the Tennessee commit, offense, defense, and special teams. He does it all. Verona will host Kenosha Bradford in a 1-8 matchup in Division I. They're the 1 seed in that entire bracket. That includes the Classic 8 teams we mentioned before. The number 1 team, as they have been almost all season long, the Franklin Sabres, champions of the Southeastern Conference, looking to get back to Camp Randall Stadium in Division I again this year. They win 42-21 in the finale at Racine Horlick. Franklin, a 1 seed, draws 8 seed Fond du Lac in the opening round, level 1 of the Division I postseason. All right, before we hear about how the voting all shook out, let's go to the Dean, Dennis Semrau. Welcome back, Dennis. What's your examination of how things played out ultimately from our voters first, then we'll get to the computers, in the large school rankings this week? What'd you make of the final poll?
Well, I love the fact that Franklin and Verona are going to go head-to-head. Unfortunately, it's not going to be in the state finals. And Verona's going to have their work cut out for them because they're going to probably have to go through McWanago. But a lot of the times teams get upset in the first round, so you never know. The team that I'm keeping an eye on is Marquette, the defending Division I state champion. They ended up winning the Greater Metro, and they moved up in our rankings a couple spots this week. And I think, but Division I think, is a wide open field. And you look at all the teams we have in our final poll here, any of those teams I think could win the Division I state title.
It is going to be a really fascinating Division I postseason. Notre Dame in Division II is a good one. Mount Horeb-Barneveld in Division III. That matchup with Catholic Memorial could be a fun one in Level 3. So we'll see how it all plays out for many of these teams. Dennis, what do you make of how the brackets were unveiled? Obviously, we spent a little time just now talking about Oconomowoc, talking about McWanago, Arrowhead, Verona, Marquette. Somehow the ultimate seedings were unveiled here by the computers. What did you make of how the large schools were processed?
Well, you take a look at Division I. In the coaches poll, 7 of the top 10 teams are in the right side of the bracket. And for us, we have 6 of our top 10 teams that were in Division I are in that bracket. So that's loaded. You look at Franklin and Verona and McWanago and Arrowhead, Oconomowoc. Yeah, I wonder about Oconomowoc and Case. Case's only loss was to Franklin, 27-14, week number 2, and I think they put a little weight into that. When the Raccoons got into first, then the next week they lost. I think it was 27-6, something like that. So maybe they put that into play, but still a conference champ, even though it was 3-way, getting the 6th seed and having to go on the road to Case, I think that's an injustice for the Raccoons. So that just gives them a little bit of a chip on the shoulder going to the playoffs.
Producer Hunter Vaughn of our ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal show accumulates the data from around the state. Hunter, what do you want to weigh in on as you see how this large school poll shook out at the end of the season?
No, obviously, Dennis, not to call you old, but you have more experience in this area than I do.
It's okay. We know
Yeah.
him really well, folks.
Yes.
We can make that assessment here.
I feel like this year, more than years in the past, we are seeing level 1 games between conference opponents. And I don't like that. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or Dennis, if this is a normal thing and I'm just noticing it now, but I feel like those should be pushed away and you should have conference opponents maybe level 2 or 3 matching up, not right away again in level 1 like we're going to see with Kimberly and Appleton North.
Yeah, I think teams, conference opponents shouldn't play in the first couple of rounds. I mean, that should maybe be a level 3 or 4. You should try to avoid that. Teams want to play some different teams. I've talked to some of the area coaches that said, like Middleton, for example, they get to play Chippewa Falls. Hey, great. It's a team we haven't seen, somebody different. We don't have to go there. They got to come here. So maybe that's an advantage of a 2-hour trip. But I don't like the fact that Kimberly just played Appleton North and they got to play them again. We saw this a few years ago with La Follette and Sun Prairie. Sun Prairie, when they were one school, beat La Follette handily week 9, but the quarterback for La Follette was out. He came back the next week, and there was your upset special in the first round. So I think teams that play each other should have to play each other right away.
I don't mind the conference matchups in level 1 as long as it doesn't compromise the seeding. Like, I wouldn't want to put 2 teams from the Big 8 conference, drastically change what their seeding would be just so that they don't play each other. I think if you can avoid that as best you can, that would be something that a committee would like to do, but understandable that it's going to happen in some situations. So I don't mind that as much as maybe you do, Hunter, but what I do mind is when seedings just don't make sense, Dennis. And it just seems to me like this Oconomowoc seeding as a 6 seed after winning the toughest conference in high school football in the state. Nobody thought before this bracket went out that maybe we should change that. Just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I would have thought that somebody takes a look at it and can kind of tweak things a little bit. That's what you would assume. But if this is what the computer spit out, if they tweaked it and this is what we came up with, then there's a problem. But I think that there should be, like you said, another layer in there.
A common sense committee. Maybe that's all it would take to just figure out exactly when these computers spit out the seedings, what it actually should end up being before they go public.
You've got a lot of Hall of Fame coaches around that are retired. I look at our Mr. Basketball, some of the coaches that are on that poll ranking these kids. They follow the sport religiously, even though they're not coaching anymore. They're fans and they know their stuff. So maybe you ought to get a coach from each of the quadrants and a Hall of Fame coach and say, okay, what do you think? You looked at this, you know the history of the conference and whatever. Is this fair or not? Maybe it's going to delay your reveal show a little bit longer on a Saturday. Teams might have to wait a little bit, but I think it's worth the delay.
I think it is as well. And speaking of reveal shows, this is it for our regular season on the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show. Our maiden voyage this year, taking over the Media Poll rankings for the large and small divisions for the 2024 regular season. We will be back with one final ranking show once the state championships conclude in November to rank the teams one final time. Special thanks to all of our voters from all around the state. I want to give a special thanks to Hunter Vaughn, who does accumulate this data each and every week. It is not an easy process to go through. Hunter, you do a fantastic job, and thank you for being part of the show, producing it, but also for putting these polls together each and every single week. Thanks, Dennis Semrau. We wish you could have been in here for the final show, but we'll get you back for the finale coming up at the end of the season, and can't wait to call some exciting postseason games with you on the rest of our ESPN Madison team.
5 weeks to go. Let's have a lot of fun here the next 5 weeks.
And if nothing else, we'll see you at Camp Randall Stadium, where ESPN Madison will broadcast all 7 WIAA State Football Championship games on 100.5 ESPN. Thank you so much for once again joining us for the ESPN Wisconsin High School Football Media Poll Rankings Reveal Show. Follow ESPN Madison on our social media platforms to review, to comment, to interact on what the rankings shook out as here for the final time in the 2024 regular season. My name is Jesse Nelson. We will see you in the playoffs in just a couple of days. Thanks so much for joining us on the ESPN Wisconsin